So as we continue with our year-long series of looking at creating a world that works for all, today we're going to look at the idea of through the prism, that's P-R-I-S-M as in mother, not prison, prism of God's love. The prism of God's love. In a way it's saying looking at love through God's eyes. And so whenever I get stuck, sometimes it is a good thing that I do, that I step back and I say, how would God see this? How would God see this? Okay? And it backs me off of my human ego-based opinion, and I start to look at that. So we're going to talk about looking at life through the prism of God's love. And the quote that goes with this is from the Global Heart Vision. We see a world in which unity with God and connection with each other is emphasized. So we see a world in which the unity with God, the awareness of our oneness with God. I love how Pam's daughter phrased that. We learn here not about God. We learn here how to be in connection with, in communion with the divine itself. That's what we're here for. And to support each other in that process. So, a great teacher a couple thousand years ago was asked, what are the two greatest laws? In a culture that was based on lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of laws, okay? And was asked, what are the two greatest laws? And he says, the first law is to love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. Now, this wasn't his idea. He's quoting Deuteronomy 6-5. And then he says, and the second one is like unto the first, which is love thy neighbor as thyself. And again, he's quoting in this case, Leviticus chapters 19-8. So he's reminding people of what they already know. He's not making stuff up. He's saying you already know this stuff. And then he goes on to say, on these two laws hang all the Torah and the prophets. The Torah is the book of laws. It's the Bible, if you will, of the Jewish culture. It's the first 5 books of what we consider the Old Testament. Okay? So on these two laws hang all the other laws, hang all the other ways to be, hang all the words and teachings of how to be by the prophets. Love God completely and love your neighbor as yourself. And we've talked about this before, that loving God, if I really, really get that, who was God?
My neighbor, myself.
All of us, right? God is all there is. You and I are God. So if I'm loving God, it isn't somebody up there in the sky. It's all of this. And then loving your neighbor as yourself. Not like yourself, but as yourself, because I and my neighbor are one. I and my neighbor are one. So on these two laws hang everything else. And he's just reminding people of what they already know. And we know this, right? We know that love is the way to deal with the world. So that's my talk today. Thank you. But we forget, don't we? I mean, that's why once a year we have a wonderful thing like Valentine's Day, is to remember, oh yeah, I got this person I'm in a relationship with that I love. We have Mother's Day once in a while to remember, oh yeah, Mom, I actually, despite all my challenges, do love her. Okay? Dad's Day, all that stuff. At least once a year we come around to remembering that. So we know this, but what gets in the way is two things. Number one, we forget. We just forget. We go to sleep. We go to sleep on this idea. And when we go to sleep, what happens then, what emerges is the second reason of what gets in the way, which is our fear. And our fear is based on our belief in separation and not enoughness. Sharif Abdullah talks about in his book, Creating a World That Works for All, that the core belief of what he calls the breaker culture, which is the challenging, problematic culture that's in the world today, is the belief in separation. You and I are separate from each other. We are separate from the earth. We are separate from everything. And the belief that there is not enough. It's not a fact, it's a belief. That there is not enough. And so when we're operating out of those two, we're not operating out of love, because love sees our unity, and love sees the enoughness of the universe, and the enoughness that is expressed by that universe in the world. So we want to wake up and start to remember the truth of who we truly are. So the first thing we come back to is that God is love. Friday I was working with some young adults up in Ashland at the launching pad there. And I told them that one of the quotes that really rearranged my thinking was from a New Thought writer named Emily Cady, who said, God is not loving. That is, God is not a being that is loving. God is love itself. Okay? God is love itself. We are immersed in a field of love. We are expressions of that infinite divine love. And therefore, the only thing that we are to manifest is love, right? So Jesus, in the Gospel of Thomas, which was one of the Gospels that was unearthed from the Dead Sea Scrolls, says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, that which you do not bring forth will kill you. So what we ultimately have within us is love. Now, it may be colored in a certain way. I may have a love for one thing. You may have a love that you're expressing in another area. But we bring forth that which we love. We call it our passion. We call it our purpose. We call it, whatever we call it. We call it that which we love, our vision. That which we love. If we bring that forward, it saves us. It expresses us. We flow and we grow and we become more from that. If we don't, if we bottle it up inside, it basically turns on us and becomes the dis-ease, because we're here to live in ease, and it becomes the dis-ease, and we get sick, and we get old, and we get tired, and we get, curmudgeonly and cynical, and we don't live fully. We don't live fully because we're not expressing that love that is really the core of what we're here to do. Emma Curtis Hopkins reminds us that all is God, and we are either blessing or cursing, and whatever we're doing, whatever we're blessing or cursing, it's always God. It's all God. So yes, that politician you don't like is God. I ran that by the young people up in Ashland on Friday, and they're kind of like, no. But it's true. Now, you don't have to agree with the politician, but the politician is still God. That person in your family that really irritates you, that ex-partner, that ex-boss, maybe it's the current boss, whoever it is, they're still God. The IRS is still God. It's all God. So we want to be blessing it all. We don't have to like it. We have preferences for the expressions of God that we want to have, but we still bless it all. See, I don't care for strawberry ice cream. I'm sorry. It's a true confession. I don't care for strawberry ice cream. But it's still good, right? It's still God, right? And so I bless strawberry ice cream, and I know that other people do. As you can probably figure, my favorite flavor is chocolate. We hit, how many chocolate shops did we hit in Ashland? All of them. And one of them twice. On the way in, on the way out. First thing we did, we landed in Ashland, we checked into our hotel, we saw this advertisement for a chocolate shop and said, let's go there. That's the last thing we did on the way out was re-go to that chocolate shop. So as you can guess, I kind of, chocolate and godliness are kind of close to each other in my own, wiring in my brain. But that doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. So if I can look at all of life and say, I have preferences, I have things I like, and that's okay, and things I dislike, and that's okay, and yet I still will be able to see God in what I don't like. That's the looking through the prism of God's love. Can I look through those eyes? Okay? So that's the challenge, that's the invitation. Now last week, we talked about money, right? And we talked about what are the two things that a minister is never supposed to talk about from the pulpit? Sex and money. By the way, the other thing that kept coming up a couple times was politics, right? So I'm going to clarify something just for the legalese about politics. In order to keep our 501c3 status, any church cannot endorse a candidate, a political candidate. So I can't sit out here and tell you that I think you should vote for Jon Stewart because I think he'd be a better candidate than any of the ones who are out there, okay? I can't do that. We can, however, by the way, endorse issues, political issues. So a few years ago when marriage equality was in the ballot in a number of states, the Home Office came out with a statement that endorsed marriage equality, and we did it not from the political point of view, but from the human rights point of view, that all people should be able to love and marry whom they choose. It's just a God-given right that all people should have. It wasn't from the political point of view, and it wasn't even from the gay agenda point of view, whatever that gay agenda is. I think the gay agenda is the same as the straight agenda, which is to live life and have a good time. Okay? But so we can talk about issues. But today we're not going to talk about politics. Today we're going to talk about sex. It's Valentine's Day. Oh, I hear that choking. And what we talked about it was funny that we can't talk about money and sex because we're here to talk about a teaching that's about human needs and aspirations. And what are the two core human needs and aspirations? They're two of the most core, basic human needs and aspirations. Money and sex, right? And if you take money, sex, and communication, you have the holy trinity of a good relationship or a bad relationship. If they're all working together and if they're all working well, you probably have a really good relationship. And if they're not working well, you probably have challenges in the relationship, right? Okay? So we're going to talk about sex. We talked money last week. But if you want to hear about money, listen to last week's talk. So what is sex? Ernest Holmes, believe it or not, talks actually a fair amount about sex in the 1926 version of the Science of Mind textbook. The 1938 was the nice, properly edited one. This is more his raw thinking. There's some very good stuff in here. So spirit is threefold in nature. We teach this. Many of you grew up with the Holy Trinity, right? Okay, and we still teach the triune nature of God. It's in the teaching symbol. Today I will remember that I have the teaching symbol on me. Last week I forgot. So we have spirit, we have soul, and we have body. The three levels. And it's all one. Okay, it's all contained within the one. Spirit is that masculine aspect. It's the active, projective, masculine factor. Soul is the receptive, creative, feminine factor, and body is the result of the union of spirit and soul. Okay? So spirit, soul get together, they create something in form. So spirit impregnates the soul with ideas. Okay? Spirit is the realm of just pure idea. It impregnates the soul, that fertile, we like to use the metaphor for soil, that fertile creative law, that creative process with ideas. And the soul, in its creativity, gives birth to those ideas in form, in the body, clothed in flesh. And that's the process of the universe. That's how everything comes into being in the universe, is that there has to be this process of coming together, and out of that something new is created. If you've looked around at nature, sex happens in nature, right? Kind of like everywhere. I'm not sure the rocks do it. But there's that great, there's a jazz song of all these, birds do it, fleas do it, Argentine bees do it, or whatever it is. All of this is the result of that process. And although we break it up into spirit and soul and body, it's all really one. Just like if you take a coin and it has a head side and a tail side, it's still all the same coin, right? Okay, so all of this is still the oneness. And what I want to say is this is not about men and women. This is about the masculine aspect and the feminine aspect, and all of us have that within us, right? Okay? One may be more pronounced within us than the other, but we all have that masculine feminine aspect, and all creativity comes out of the union, the coming together of that masculine feminine aspect within us. The idea generator and the idea receiver, and out of that comes the creativity, and out of that comes something in form. So we get an idea for a painting, we have to do something with it, it comes out of form. Ernest Holmes, this is small print here, says life is androgynous. In other words, it contains within itself both the masculine and the feminine factors. The male and female of creation come from one principle. All come from the one, and all will return to the one. All are now in the one and will forever remain in the one. So there isn't a differentiation, but there is in the oneness, but there is a differentiation in the expression of that. Okay? Are you with me on that? Okay. There's a difference in the expression of that. Back of all the manifestation, back of anything that's ever manifested. And if you want to know what manifested is, it means it's in form. Okay, so you, me, the chair, the building, all of this, back of everything must be the desire to create. See, without that desire to create, nothing happens, right? In Zen Buddhism, there's a practice of getting rid of desires, because there's this kind of belief that some people have that, oh man, if I could just get rid of all my desires, I would be at peace. Okay? And so the Zen Buddhist spends years and years and years trying to get rid of their desires, and they finally go to the Zen master and they say, I've gotten rid of all my desires. And the Zen master looks at them and says, why'd you do that? And they say, well, because I desired enlightenment. I desired to do so. Well, you better get rid of the desire for enlightenment. Okay? And they go back and they finally realize it's futile. You can't get rid of your desire. It's part of being human. We have a desire to express. And not only do we have a desire, it's the divine urge to express through us. That's what Ernest Holmes calls this desire, is the divine urge to express. The reason we have the universe that we have, the physical universe that we have, is because of the divine desire to express. Okay? And it expresses as stars, as galaxies, as planets, as trees, as animals, as you and me. That's the divine urge. It's alive within all of us. And that urge, that desire, and by the way, that in this V is represented as, or in this teaching symbol is represented as the V. That's the desire, that's the urge to create, to move something from just sitting there in the pure mind of God, pure spirit, into something, into a form. So if I have a desire for beauty, I move it from just the isness of beauty, if you will, into, say, a rose garden, or into a symphony, or into a painting, or into a loving, wonderful gift for Valentine's Day for somebody. I have that desire. It can be big or small, it doesn't matter, but I have that desire. The desire gathers energy and produces power to express itself. When I have that desire, it gathers energy and produces power to express itself. I'm looking here at our Tai Chi teacher, and it's the same process. You gather energy and you produce. It's the actual yin-yang process in expression. It's the Tai Chi process. So this life urge is so powerful that it will cause a little seed to break through the hardest earth to establish roots. You ever seen anything growing out of like a solid rock or up from the concrete? That's the divine urge to create showing up. It will not be suppressed. So spirit coming forth into expression, and it happens through all of creation. And it's the loosing of energy into action. See, spirit is pure energy, but it has to be moved into action in order for something to happen. Last week we talked about that if you want to move something from idea into form, you have to take action. And you have to take action in the physical. Otherwise, we just metaphysical. We stay up in the level of the mind, the level of idea, and nothing actually shows up. See, I can dream about making a beautiful chair all I want to, but until I actually take the action of making the chair, or calling somebody else up to make the chair for me, whatever, it's be better for me. Unless I have that desire, nothing happens, unless I take that action. So humans reenact the nature of God. Ernest says, back of every act of man is some form of desire to express. Back of every act is some form of desire to express. All that man is his mentality, or his mind, both conscious, which is the masculine, and subconscious, which is the feminine, plus what he expresses, which is the form, the body. That's all we are. We're that which chooses, we're that which creates, and then we're that which we express out of that. And that's who we are. So sex is perfectly natural. Some of you might want to take a breath with that. Some of you already know this. It is often, as Ernest says, a part of the expression of love and affection, though it does not have to be. He says the sex relationship is not necessary to the expression of real love. Love is the givingness of the self, and if this givingness is complete, sex will take care of itself. So notice what comes first. What comes first is the givingness of the love. And when we're in that givingness of love, The sex, or how we express that, will take care of itself. See, some people come together and their sex is to create a business. Some people come together and their sex is to create a beautiful work of art together. Okay? So we do the self-givingness, we invoke that process, we invoke that divine energy, and it may or may not have to do with a physical act of sex. But it does have to do with the joining of forces, the joining of the union of our gifts and somebody else's gifts to create something. Because without that joining together and that divine urge to create, nothing happens. Are you with me? Yeah. Okay. So where we run into challenges with sex is usually in one of two directions. We overly express, and out of that we waste our energy, we wear ourselves out, and ultimately we lose focus on love. If we're running around just trying to get sex, 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 more sex, more sex, more sex, we have forgotten about the primary reason and the primary purpose of sex, which is the expression of love. The self-givingness in love. Okay? The other way we get in trouble with sex, and many of us have this, is repression. The old rules, right? If you're like me, you grew up with a lot of rules. I grew up in the Catholic Church with a lot of nuns, angry nuns, with an angry mother, and with a bunch of priests who liked to tell us that they knew about sex while they were themselves celibate. It didn't work out so well. So we have belief systems that don't support healthy expression. A lot of the biblical belief systems of you should do this and you shouldn't do that, are, especially around sex, are based on the fact that at the time they wanted to build the tribe. Okay? They wanted to build the population of the tribe, you know, to make it stronger, to make it more powerful. And so if you're trying to build a tribe, you don't want to have homosexuality because homosexuality doesn't produce children, right? And you don't want to have masturbation because masturbation doesn't produce children. So you've got, you know, all of Leviticus, it's an abomination to, you know, not all of Leviticus, it's one little teeny tiny line in the whole 27 books of Leviticus. Of how it's an abomination for man to lay with another man. You've got what's called the sin of omonism, who was supposed to go in and have sex with his recently deceased brother's widow in order to give her children, and chose to be loyal to his wife and pulled out, and was cursed by God for spilling his seed on the ground. That's where we get that. Okay? We wouldn't necessarily follow those rules today, but a lot of people still have that running around in the unconscious. So we have these old, outdated rules that are really about producing more and more people. And frankly, if you look at the world today, we'd probably produce a few less people, right? Some of our just problems of existence on the planet would benefit if we would slow down the reproductive capacity. That's my political statement for the moment. So we have these rules. Women are supposed to be or aren't supposed to be. Men are supposed to be or aren't supposed to be. And you can fill in the blanks. You know what yours are, right? You know, and women who break those rules are given all sorts of names, and men who break those rules are given all sorts of names, right? Okay? So we have those running around, and that's where we get into trouble, is that repression. Now what we've noticed is starting from actually probably, there's always been people who have been looking at those old rules and saying, the heck with the rules, I'm going to go the opposite direction. But we got a real influx of that starting in the 50s and in the 60s and 70s with a whole lot of, you know, free love and have sex with whoever you want to, which was a response to, a reaction to, really, the repression of the past generations. Okay? Today we're looking for, how do I balance that out? How do I come back to not being repressed, but being wise in my expression of sexuality? And wisdom comes from a combination of the heart and the head, the intellect and the love. That's where wisdom comes from. So sex with wisdom is perfectly natural. Wisdom, some of the guidelines of wisdom are that there's consent happening on both parties, right? Part of the wisdom is that each person is old enough to make a conscious choice. Part of the wisdom is that I can love whoever I'm genuinely attracted to. Now here's the thing with that. Who I'm genuinely attracted to may not be the same person that you're genuinely attracted to. And you can get all up in arms, or I can get all up in arms of telling you that, well, because you're attracted to somebody that I'm not attracted to, you shouldn't have the right to be attracted to that person. We've done that throughout history. I'm Catholic. You shouldn't have anybody who's not Catholic that you're attracted to. When I was living in Seattle, I met an old couple who was, I think he was Finnish and she was Danish, I think it was. And in the old days, the Finns and the Danes hated each other. And these two kids fell in love. They lived in the Ballard neighborhood, which was a big Scandinavian neighborhood. And it was an outrage because a Finn and a Dane were in love with each other and got married. Because the rules were, they're not supposed to do that. We know that 50 or 60 years ago, we were going through the same thing that we're going through now with homosexuality. We were going through the same thing with black and white, right? Black people and white people are not supposed to fall in love with each other. People who are rich and poor are not supposed to fall in love with each other. People who are of a certain social class are not supposed to fall in love with each other. People who are of a certain nationality, religion, we've created all these barriers. The thing is that, guess what? God's love. So God's bigger than all the barriers we can create. And we're always pushing against the barriers. Because love won't be contained by man-made ideas. And so sometimes that gets challenging for us because I look at it and I say, you know, I would not be interested in having sex with another guy. But I'm willing to let the people who are have sex with another guy. Because that's what turns them on. That's their attraction. You know, and we all have, you know, we're attracted to all sorts of people, right? And they're different. Some people love tall people, some people love short people. Some people love fat people, some people love thin people, some people love old, some people love appropriately young. You know, all the combinations. Have you noticed? And some people you look at and say, how did those two get together? Right? The thing is, something within them caused an attraction. And we don't get to judge that attraction, much less make laws about it. Because love is bigger than that. So that's the natural part of that. So sex with wisdom. So what does this have to do with a world that works for all? A whole lot of pain has surrounded sex in our past, right? And out of that pain, there's been all sorts of acting out. All sorts of stuff that has happened. Either trying to repress it, trying to force it on other people, trying to do anything except acting with love. And so if we understand that we're looking through the prism of God's love, and that sex is just one of the areas where we can look through the prism of God's love, and where we can approach with love, true, deep, spiritual love, okay? We start to bring a different consciousness to sex. And that's what I'm going to invite us to do, is to have that, to hold that view from God's point of view. By the way, what does this have to do with a pledge drive? We're in the middle of a pledge drive. Why would we be talking about sex in the middle of a pledge drive? Well, money is another form of expression. It expresses love, it expresses creativity. Do we use it wisely, or do we follow old rules that say, oh, you know, whatever our old rules are about that? Okay. So money and sex tie into each other a lot. Have you noticed? Have you noticed? Yes. So this week, 2 spiritual practices. Number 1, ask yourself, what does the divine urge want to create in my life at this point in time? What is that divine urge? What does it want to express? And am I open and receptive, or am I repressed due to outdated beliefs of things like I can't? Am I wasting my energy on other things, or am I allowing it to express? Secondly, second spiritual practice, I let my love, my deep love, pull me to what I truly want. Am I willing to let my true love, my deep love, the real love that lives within me, pull me to what I truly want? Rumi says, let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. Am I willing to say yes to what it is my heart truly desires, to what truly wants to manifest through me, what I truly love? So that's your 2 spiritual practices this week. What's the divine urge? What is that love wanting to create in my life? And basically, am I willing to say yes? Are you willing to take that on? Cool. Me too. So I'm going to close with a final quote out of the 1926 Science of Mind. Love, actually, this is the, no, this is the current one. I'm sorry. This is the official Science of Mind text. Love is the central flame of the universe. This is one of my favorite Ernest Holmes quotes. Love is the central flame of the universe, nay, the very fire itself. It is written that God is love, and that we are his express likeness. Love is self-givingness through creation, the impartation of the divine through the human. Love reigns supreme over all. The essence of love fires the heart, stimulates the emotions, renews the soul, and proclaims the spirit. I invite you today to let yourself be in love. You don't have to have somebody or an object to be in love with. I invite you to be consciously more open, more fully than ever before in love. Because the truth is, you're already in it. And to just open to that. Let's move into prayer. So I know that there is one infinite presence, one that is pure, perfect love. A love that is beyond all of our ideas, all of our understanding, all of our judgments, all of our limitations we place on it. It is beyond all that. It jumps all the fences, squeezes through all the hard places, opens up the hard-packed soil of our mind. That love is greater than everything else. Whether we call it the love of the universe, the love of God, the love of Spirit, it is that infinite sense of love. It is all there is. And each of us is one of that right here, right now. And we know it. There's a part of us that has always known this as our truth. No matter how life has hardened us, there's a part of us that still knows this is our truth. No matter how afraid of it we are, there's a part of us that still knows this is our truth. And so I speak my word today. We truly open up our hearts. We truly open up that part of us that knows, that sees through the prism of God's love, that sees with the eyes of God's love, that sees, first of all, ourselves. We look at ourselves with love. That then we take and look at our neighbor with love. We look at the world with love. We allow the self-givingness of Spirit to move through us in the most beautiful, perfect ways possible, right here and right now. We say yes to that love in ways greater than ever before. We allow that love to then draw us into our greater yet to be. We allow that love to expand us into the beautiful divine beings that we always have been and are meant to be. We open our awareness to who we truly are. And for this I'm grateful. For each of us who is saying yes to love today, I am ever so grateful. And we call this good. We know that by simply saying yes, the universe, the Spirit, the law moves through us to create that opening, to create that love, to express that love in more full ways, more beautiful ways than ever before. And so it does. And together we anchor this by saying, and so it is. Thank you.
To love, serve.